This podcast is sponsored by 33 Bedford Row Chambers, a leading common law set offering legal advice and advocacy in civil, criminal, family, immigration, employment, and regulatory law, including media and sports law, and inquests at all levels, including work with an international element. They have over 80 specialist barristers, including distinguished silks. Head on to their website at www.33bedfordrow.co.uk and reach out to their clerks if you require any legal representation. Do also follow them on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. 33 Bedford Row Chambers have recently opened their offices in the Steel City building in Sheffield and are welcoming work from within the region and beyond. Hello and welcome to another episode of the latest with Law Simplified. I am your podcast host, Farine Ali, and today we are joined by a leading King's Counsel from the UK. Our guest has appeared in some of the most high-profile cases in the country involving murder, terrorism, and serious and historic sexual offences. These are just some examples of the types of cases he has dealt with. He has also acted for high net worth individuals, successful business people, and celebrities from the sporting, media, and entertainment industries. Today, he joins us to talk about his journey to becoming a barrister and a leading King's Counsel, as well as sharing some of his most interesting cases from the criminal courts. He will also be talking about the new Sheffield annex of 33 Bedford Row Chambers as he steps into his role as head of chambers. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Gul Nawaz Hussain, King's Counsel from 33 Bedford Row Chambers. Hello and welcome to Law Simplified, Gul Nawaz. How are you doing this morning?
Hi, Farine. Thank you for inviting me and having me on. I'm good, thanks.
Can I just start off by saying, just seen recently, and I'm sure that a lot of people will have seen it as well, that you have been shortlisted as a finalist for having the best hair at the bar. Many congratulations.
Yeah, it's good to know that after 22 years of being at the criminal defence coalface, I'm finally acknowledged, not for my work, but something I have little control over.
Yeah. Well, we've had some questions that we'll be asking you about your hair care routine. We'll part them at the end, I think. And perhaps we could get started by looking at your journey. Now, you were born in Tinsley in Sheffield. I think you've been very open about your very humble beginnings. And I have to say, it's very commendable what you have achieved over this time span. Can you tell our audiences what made you want to become a barrister?
Well, for me, I grew up obsessed with comics and superheroes. And if you were to speak to anyone who knows me, I had always wanted to be Batman. And if you were to ask me now in an unguarded moment, I'd probably still admit to that. But obviously, I didn't have the wealth and the martial prowess to become Batman. So I had to look for something else, but it was important for me to fight for something, fight for justice, try to right wrongs. And growing up, my dad was a steelworker and a trade unionist as well. And, you know, he was on strike, and I saw lots of things happen in his life, industrial action, racial discrimination, all these kinds of things. And then also in the community that I was growing up in. So I sort of had a very good understanding of the need for people to be able to stand up for others if they're unable or unwilling to do so themselves. And that sort of combined with watching Crown Court, Rumpole of the Bailey and Colombo and all these things, sort of it just directed me towards law, because, as I still say, it's an arena in which one person can make a difference.
Yes, very true. And what a career you've had. Can you remember your first moment in court, Gul Nawaz? Am I asking for too much here?
No. I remember my embarrassing moments acutely. Yeah, I think it was Ilkeston Magistrates Court. I did my pupillage in Nottingham, and I was prosecuting, one of the very few times I have, But when you start off, particularly in the provinces, that's the kind of work that's plentiful. And it was going equipped for steel, to steel. And I lost that gloriously.
Is it a memorable moment for you? I assume that the first moment in court always is.
I suppose my first time in Crown Court doing a trial was perhaps a little more memorable. But I think perhaps I had a degree of naivety, ignorance, and being self-assured that it didn't really faze me. I wasn't bothered about standing up and speaking. I'd done so many other things in my life growing up where I'd gained confidence. So martial arts has been a huge part of my life since I was 12 years old. And when you've been in a ring opposite someone who's wanting to punch, kick, knee, and elbow you,
yes,
everything else isn't really as intimidating. So I always try and snap back to that. I think, well, look, what's the worst that's going to happen? So it didn't faze me. It was something I relished. I still do. I love being in court. Jury trials are fantastic.
I have read some of the notable cases that you have acted in, and just seeing the seriousness of those, and we're going to touch on those in a moment. It doesn't surprise me that this is something that doesn't faze you, because you deal with quite serious cases like murder, terrorism, and quite serious violent offences. You were actually appointed as Queen's Counsel in 2018. And at the time, you were the first Queen's Counsel, and now King's Counsel, to have been appointed as such in over 15 years in Sheffield. I actually saw a YouTube video, Gul Nawaz, where you shared some intimate moments and the ceremony. A special day for you and your family?
Yeah, it was really special. I mean, for me, to be honest, I suppose that's the only time in my professional career there was a real danger of me becoming phased, because at that ceremony, when you take the oath, you repeat your name, and there were people getting their names wrong because it was this huge occasion. So for me, I sort of put my head in a space where this doesn't matter, and it all sort of hit me the day after. The really important thing for me was to take my mum and dad there. They'd only ever seen the Palace of Westminster on television and the Big Ben chiming for the news at 10. So to be able to take my mum and dad, my dad and mum, through their hard work, I was able to achieve what I did. To be able to take them somewhere so special and treat them in a special way, that's what really made it.
And I'm sure they're very, very proud, and you're very inspiring, Gul Nawaz. I've looked at your journey, and the fact that you've been very open about your humble beginnings, it inspires us, especially aspiring students at barristers that are wanting to enter the profession. So thank you very much indeed for being very open about it. I'm going to talk about what you're up to now. So just recently, 33 Bedford Row have announced the opening of their Sheffield office. You are the head of chambers in Sheffield. Can you tell us what your vision is for 33 Bedford Row in Sheffield?
I mean, it's really to continue the fantastic work that 33 Bedford Row has been doing for the years before we joined it. It's a group of 10 of us moved just as we were coming out of lockdown. And we had collectively decided that we wanted to work in a modern way, and modern in every sense, whether that was technology, but also in the way that we approach our lay clients and our professional clients. There can be a tendency for barristers' chambers to be stuffy and old-fashioned. Our place is nothing like that. Its decor is very modern. You'll only find one sort of obviously legal photo, which is one of the Old Bailey. Everything else is sort of Tarantino posters, things like that. but it reflects us and our character and also our city. So we have lots of artwork showing our city. And it just underscores how we want to do the job, which is we can be modern, we can be approachable, we can make clients feel completely at ease, but that doesn't mean sacrificing our excellence, our professionalism, and our ability to deliver A1 results. So for all of us, that's our intention. And it was a real statement of faith when 33 Bedford Row invested in us, metaphorically and literally, in giving us these chambers here. I mean, it's a fantastic building. It's called Steel City House, which is Steel City is the nickname for Sheffield.
Yeah.
And it's a very imposing building. You know, we're on the third floor. We have fantastic neighbours, and it's just a really nice environment to come into. And every solicitor and client that's been in here is just impressed from the moment they walk in through the front door. And so it really sets the tone for how we want to do things, and the way that all of us, we have a mixed team here, civil, family and crime. But what we're all unified in is how we want to do the job, but more importantly, how we want to be as a team, support one another. And we understand that people will have different needs and different expectations. And it's being able to look after people and make them feel as included as part of the team, rather than trying to force square pegs into round holes. So, you know, we're really proud of what we have here. We're now going to start recruiting, because it's always difficult to try and ask people to join you when you don't have anywhere. But our physical premises now really establish who we are, our permanence, and our ultimate intent for the future. So I'm sure we'll have additions to our team.
Fantastic. And just on the topic of wall art, I think you have a registration behind you that says "Lawyer Up." Am I right?
Yeah, that was a gift from a family who went to Arizona recently. So yeah, huge, as I think most lawyers are, huge Better Call Saul fan.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Now, because of your deep-rooted connection with Sheffield, of course, you were born there, you've studied there. Was it an easy decision for you to step in as head of chambers?
It was, when we moved, I mean, I'm head of chambers here, but we're very much a team. You don't really need to be a head here, because everybody works together. Sure. And I think that was what was important when we left our old set. We were all of one view of how we wanted to be, how we wanted to work, our principles, our ethics. And when you're working amongst people like that, it's like working with friends. And, you know, obviously there'll be differences and perhaps disagreements, but what fundamentally unites us is strong. And obviously, being Silk, the responsibility sort of fell on my shoulders, but it's one that I've taken up. It's one I've had in the past, and I'm very grateful and honoured to 33 Bedford Row for placing their faith in me. And recently, they've appointed me deputy head of the entire chambers and head of all the northern annexes. So that includes Leeds, York, and Chepstow in Wales. So, yeah, Sheffield is really at the heart of 33 Bedford Row's plans for the future and their conquest of the north.
Oh, fantastic. Many congratulations again, Gul Nawaz. Let's talk about the building that the chambers is housed in. So you've mentioned already it's Steel City House. Why is that location special to you?
Well, it's central. We're very close to the other leading set of chambers in Sheffield. But, you know, it's an imposing building. It's a little bit like the Flatiron building in New York in terms of its shape. But it has these huge wooden doors. It has a red telephone box outside. So when I want to become a superhero, I can just jump in there and get changed. But it's symbolic of Sheffield in many ways. And it was a local property developer that sort of brought it up to modern standards. And it's very close to all the sort of hotels. funnily enough, just across from where I'm sat now is the Leopold, which was actually the old education building.
Yes.
And I hadn't been in there for a very, very long time. And Lord Justice Males, as he is now, was visiting Sheffield, and we held a mess for him. And it was held in one of the large rooms at Leopold, the Leopold. And he asked me, Naz, have you been here before? And I said, well, it's funny you should ask me that. The last time I was in this room was when I was probably about 10 years old. My dad was on strike, and my sisters and I were here to collect free clothing. And now, sort of 30 years on, I'm sat here next to a High Court judge. So it was a surreal experience. But yeah, the building is fantastic. It's so easy to find, and it has all the modern amenities. We have 5 rooms here. Each of the rooms is named after a celebrity who's been arrested, and his or her mugshot is outside. So we have the Clark's room, which is the Johnny Cash room. Then after that, we have the Marilyn Monroe room. We then have the Cooler, which is the Steve McQueen room because it has no windows. The best room, in which my colleague Dan is currently working, is the David Bowie room. That's our boardroom. And I've been allowed to have a room, which is the Elvis room. And it's not really his mugshot, it's his army photograph. So yeah, we have ample space, and we have 8 hot desks outside, a kitchen, dining area, chill out zone. Our projector and projector screen are going up, so we can have presentations and seminars here. So it's fantastic for us. We actually all really enjoy coming in.
Oh, great. That sounds so great. So I'll definitely be visiting Gul Nawaz.
More than welcome. Yeah, again, thanks to Dan, we have a fantastic posh coffee machine. I've not figured out how to work it yet.
No,
we have.
That is persuasive for me. I'm booking my ticket to Sheffield. Thank you so much for sharing that. We're now going to move on to some of the cases that you've dealt with, some cases that are memorable to you. Now, you have dealt with quite a lot of serious crime and cases that have been high profile and have been featured in the news. Could you potentially share an interesting murder case? I'm not sure if the word interesting goes with it, but a memorable case where you've defended somebody or prosecuted somebody which has involved murder.
Well, I mean, I only defend. There was one recently where it was a drive-by shooting, and the shooting had essentially been filmed by the occupants of the car and uploaded to Snapchat. And then external CCTV cameras also caught the shooting taking place. And the dialogue within the car was, he's there, shoot him, you've shot him. So in many respects, this was almost a nailed-on case. My lay client was the rear seat passenger. And it was a case where, somewhat strangely, the prosecution hadn't checked their details in terms of timings of certain things. And you're always looking for a toehold to get in. But we uncovered some issues with the CCTV timings because our lay client had sort of left the car after the event and gone a different route. And he was the only one that was acquitted. But it was in the face of this, on the face of it, overwhelming evidence of essentially a confession recorded and then uploaded. And there was an element of a cutthroat as well. So it was, in some respects, it happens often in murders. It looks like not a lot is happening. There is a lot going on behind the scenes because often if it's a multi-handed case, you don't know if somebody's going to turn on your client.
Yes.
So you're sort of working in the background to be ready for that eventuality because you can't respond to it on the hoof. So you have to be ready. The junior that I was working with on that one, it was a really, really good trial, and be able to get the jury to sort of turn their focus and actually look at details that superficially flew in the face of the tidal wave of evidence was really important.
Wow. Just wow. And a terrorism case that you might want to share with our audiences that you've dealt with?
Probably two. I mean, the first one I ever did, and when they talk about hitting the ground running, this was, I think 6 years call, and it was the trial of the 21/7 attempted suicide bombings on the London underground network, and so also on the trains. And I came in and was led, and in that trial, our lay client ran a cutthroat defense essentially, but that only transpired partway through the case. So we weren't aware that this was going to happen. And in that case, you had all the leading silks of their day, many of whom are still practicing. Every single junior in that case has gone on to take silk. The prosecution team was, as he was then, Nigel Sweeney, Queen's Counsel, leading Max Hill, and the second junior was Alison Morgan, all of whom are silks now. And during our case, the defense case, my silk fell ill with a heart condition. And I had to step up. So that was one time where all my experience for a split second wasn't helping, but I sort of gathered my thoughts and realized that, look, this is on my shoulders now. I need to step up and meet the challenge. And I don't think the other parties involved in the case would mind me saying this, that they perhaps thought it was going to be like taking sweets from a child, because the illustrious silk that was leading me, Stephen Camlish, King's Counsel, who's formidable in these kinds of trials, had a heart condition and was gone. So the baby was minding the shop. But it was a little bit like a fight, I suppose, because I did have Steve sort of working me like a corner man and giving me advice on how to do things. But managing to navigate that very difficult defense case and close the case. And again, we had a really good result in that case because everyone else was convicted and given life sentences, and it was a hung jury for our lay client. So it was a fantastic case to be involved in. So many things happened. You could have a whole career at the bar and not have all those things happen. And it was just such a steep learning curve. And then more recently, during lockdown, I did a terrorism trial at the Old Bailey, which is a building I love being at. And it was two brothers accused of plotting a London Bridge-style attack, so a sort of marauding terrorist attack. And they were dubbed the Gallagher brothers of terrorism because they were constantly bickering. Your listeners will be able to find them online. But that was a case where, again, there was, on the face of it, overwhelming evidence. And my lay client didn't give evidence. And then during the prosecution closing speech, had outbursts, including swearing at the prosecution silk. So you're left in a situation where your client hasn't said anything to benefit him in terms of his evidence. Anything he has said hasn't really helped him a great deal. And he's charged with terrorism in a city that has been blighted by that terror more times than one cares to remember. So approaching the jury in that closing speech was a really, really Herculean effort for me. But I sort of figured out what I wanted to do, and I realized, it was like turning an ocean liner. I had to turn them a full 180 degrees. And somebody very kindly said of me in Chambers and Partners review that I'm a great storyteller. And that's true. I sort of craft my speeches like stories because I think as a species, we've communicated wisdom and experience through stories, and that's what we identify with. And perhaps it's also my fascination with film as well. And I sort of made my closing speech, and he was unanimously acquitted. So it was a real achievement. The only one better than that was it wasn't a terrorism trial; it was a rape trial, and I got the case as a junior, relatively late in the day. And the client had absconded. So the solicitor just said, look, Naz, there's no point staying here. He's going to be convicted. And there was just something about the case that made me think, no, I need to stay here. I need to fight this one. So we had no defense statement. There was an interview, but obviously that's of limited use because it's a self-serving interview. And it all rested on my cross-examination of the complainant and my closing speech. And he was unanimously acquitted in his absence. So that's one I do take pride in, because that really was down to me. That's all I had to work with, was what I could do. I didn't have a client there. So that's my sort of, in a professional sense, the one I take greatest pride in, because it really rested upon my ability to do my job properly. And it was one of the cases I used in my application. So,
Here, and all of that sounds so fascinating. You also represent high net worth individuals, celebrities, and sporting legends, if I can put it that way. Have you a case that you can share to our audiences where you have acted for somebody in the limelight?
Yeah, I'm not going to mention names, but the cases themselves aren't all that noteworthy. It was the experience of dealing with someone who has a high profile, and then the after effects. So I'm not really a football fan, but after one particular case, I went to my first ever football match, which happened to be a Premier League match. And, we went down and I took my kids and we went into the players' changing rooms. We had dinner there, went up to the box. So, if Carlsberg did football experiences, that was the football. Similarly, very fortunate to have sat ringside for world title fights, courtesy of clients I've represented in the past. Probably the most fun was I represented the designer of a Bond car.
Oh, wow.
And after that case, my friends and I were invited down to Aston Martin in Gaydon, and we were taken on a tour of the factory. We saw the museum. It was an unbelievable experience.
I'm in the wrong area, Gul Nawaz.
Trust me, Fareen, those happen once in a blue moon.
Oh dear.
More often than not, you're trying to scrabble lunch within 20 minutes and run down to the cells of a Crown Court where the lights aren't working, the toilets are overflowing, and there's not enough staff to be able to service needs. That's the reality of criminal law. These little sojourns into first-class life are enjoyable, but then they're not the everyday experience. As I know you will know, and our listeners will know,
absolutely,
the criminal justice system has been neglected by parties of all political hues, and that doesn't seem to be improving anytime soon. Yes, unfortunately.
Yeah, very unfortunate. I want to now give you a moment to share any closing comments that you might have for, let's say, solicitors that are watching this podcast, or our listeners, the public members. Is there something that you would like to say to them?
Well, for the public, I think it's a travesty that how the justice system works isn't taught at schools, because it's what allows our society to function. It stops the strong from exploiting the weak. It stops people wanting to take the law into their own hands. But for our system to have integrity, you need individuals within it who are giving it their all. And that's very difficult to do when they're not being supported and funded. And you need people to understand why decisions are made in the way that they are. Far too often we have newspapers saying, somebody was charged with this and he's got off. They use that expression. And there's no understanding or explanation of the intervening process. Now it's 12 members of the public, like us, who sit in judgment. And I think that would dispel a lot of the misunderstandings, the deliberate misleading that takes place in sections of our society. And I think people would then start to appreciate why the system needs to be invested in. Some of my favorite clients, I don't want to tar anyone with a brush or what some would call Daily Mail type readers, who when they come into the criminal justice system, they see how things actually work or don't work, to be more exact. And their eyes are like saucers. And then they all of a sudden start to appreciate why it's not right that a government minister or an MP can pay privately to be represented by the best silks in the country. Yet when someone's being prosecuted for an offence, they should cobble by, they shouldn't have access to expert evidence, to intermediaries, to all these kinds of things. But it shouldn't take someone to be charged with a criminal offence for them to develop that understanding and appreciation of the importance of our criminal justice system. So I think I would encourage people to understand why this system is important. And you need people in it doing their job properly. So as a defence advocate, my job is to represent my clients to the best of my abilities, to put forward their defence to the best of my abilities. Now, by doing that, the knock-on effect is that should encourage and force the prosecution to raise their game as well. And for the police to raise their game to investigate properly, for the CPS to consider charges properly. And if everybody's giving it their all, if everybody's firing on all cylinders, you have the best chance of the end result being as close to justice as you could possibly get. But it's where corners are cut and people become jaded, and I don't say that pejoratively, because of the pressures that they're working under. That system starts to crack, and it's everyday people that pay the price, whether they are complainants or defendants. So for members of the public, that's what I'd say. It is important. Don't listen to this rubbish about lefty lawyers. These politicians are the same ones that will be getting those lawyers to get them out of trouble. They're caught doing something they shouldn't have done. They're simply trying to incite you to hate people, when really, our job is to uphold the laws of this country and to apply them properly. To solicitors, it's, obviously instruct me for reasons more than just my hair. But it's about, again, not becoming jaded, I think. It's so difficult now for solicitors to get hold of cases, to keep a hold of cases, because there's so many pressures. Clients are understandably demanding, but the time that can be devoted is ever decreasing. And that's an ethos that we have here, which is we add value. And all my team understands that you make a solicitor's life easy, even if the result doesn't go the way you wanted, there's a better chance you will be instructed again because you've added value for that solicitor. This perception that some chambers have and barristers have that briefs should come to them on a velvet cushion and they should be presented with it. The solicitor should do it. That's, if it ever was true, it's no longer true now. You have to work as a team. And I don't want to give away any secrets, but barristers can be a little bit lazy. So don't be scared to crack that whip, to encourage, the team to really work as a team.
Yeah.
And realize where the strengths are. And to prospective students, I would just say, give it your all. Be true to yourself. To thine own self be true. That's something that I sincerely believe in. You mentioned my upbringing and my past. I think your personal experiences, that's your superpower. The life you've lived, the experiences that you've had is your superpower because nobody else has it. And what you have to find is a way to use that as your motivation, as a way to explain why you want to do the job that you want to do. And you don't just have to have been through hardship. And it's easy to think people who have had a privileged upbringing don't experience difficulties and don't experience challenges as well. And the perception that they are privileged can be difficult for them to contend with as well. And that's something to be alive to. So I say to everybody that, embrace your past. If you've had difficulties, don't deny them, address them. I love the philosopher Rumi, and I was reminded of one of his quotes, which was, the scars on the heart are through which light enters. And it's the experiences that you have, even the bad ones, at some point, some good will come from. And so you have to find that. So if you've had to take a year out for some reason, it's something I do in my cases. If there's a skid, well, they tell you to steer into the skid. Don't steer away from it because you lose control.
Yeah.
Steer into the skid. Yes, I didn't do as well as I could have done. Or I took a year out for this reason, but then work it into a positive. There must have been something positive that came from that. And, be confident in yourself. You don't have to be someone that fits into a mold. You can be yourself. What's important is that you do the job. So, you don't have to speak in a way that sounds like you're related to the Queen. I have my Yorkshire accent.
Sure.
It's me. What's important is what you say and how you say it, and that you communicate clearly. That's the real important thing. And be true to yourself. We're in a time now where people can more comfortably and easily be themselves. So obviously, I have my hair in a top knot. Occasionally people have commented that I should get a haircut. And then I asked them what style they would like their men to wear their hair, bunches, plaits. That tends to make them back off. To give you an idea how we've changed, I was once in a trial. Silk looked at me wearing a pink shirt. Pink's my favorite color.
Oh, nice.
And said, shook his head and said, "Pink shirt." And I just said, "I don't know what's more troubling, you giving me fashion advice, or you thinking I'm going to take it from you?" And one of the other silks sort of clapped and said, "Well done." So just be yourself.
Yeah.
As long as you can do the job, that's what's important. Do the job, and be yourself. But obviously, we have conventions and norms within our profession. They're there for a reason. So I'm not saying do something ridiculous, but there's nothing wrong with being you. Retain your identity. Some people are happy to change their accents, and if that's the decision they've made, then all the strength to them. All I'm saying is don't feel the need to have to conform. Be yourself. Be your own superhero.
Thank you so much for that. That was so motivating, Gul Nawaz. Thank you very much. And I've seen a LinkedIn post where you had invited solicitors to come into the office for a cup of chai. So I'm sure that I'll be coming along too, but any solicitors that are watching this podcast interview, do feel free to pop in for a cup of chai with Gul Nawaz. I hope I'm not stepping on your toes when I say that.
No, the tea bags and the coffee is well stocked here because I don't have any of it.
Nice.
But yeah, everything's well stocked here. There's always someone knocking around. My two trusted lieutenants here are Dan Foster and Ruth Pierce, who have been fantastic during the whole moving process, really supportive, and everyone else here. It's an amazing team to be part of, and then the wider 33 Bedford Row family. So yeah, when you're passing by, you're more than welcome to pop in.
So to all the solicitors watching this, pop in for a cup of chai with Gul Nawaz right now. If you're passing Sheffield, just go into the office. Is it Yorkshire tea, Gul Nawaz, or is it PG Tips? That's the important question from me.
I think with the way that things are going, it may well be Lidl tea.
Oh, nice. Okay.
But I can't talk as to the provenance of the tea in the bags, but it tastes okay.
Oh, great. Well, that's the key thing. And one last question. So we've had a number of messages come in following the post yesterday. People actually want to know about your hair care routine. I'm not even joking, Gul Nawaz. So what shampoo do you use? What conditioner do you use? And what do you do to have your hair in such a great condition?
I think I'm very lucky. Genetics, I think, is a large part of it. But I'm trying to think what I use now. Ginger shampoo from the Body Shop. Ooh. And a little bit of conditioner, and then is it argan oil?
Yes.
I'm pretending like I don't know what it is. It's like Iron Man at my house. You open the things up and it's all there.
Oh, great. Well, I've heard great things about the ginger shampoo, so that is it. I'm going to go and buy some. Thank you so much, Gul Nawaz. And thank you so much.
Oh, no, you're welcome.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here today.
No, thank you for inviting me on, Fareen. It's great to be on a show which has had so many illustrious guests before me. It was fantastic of them to agree to be my warm-up act. And thank you very much.
And we're hugely honoured to have you and to have learned so much from you today. Thank you so much and take care.
Thank you, Farine. Goodbye.
There we have it, Mr. Gul Nawaz Hussain, King's Counsel from 33 Bedford Row Chambers. I want to say a huge thank you to them for sponsoring this episode. If you're a solicitor based in or around the region or happen to be passing through Sheffield, do make sure to drop into their chambers for a cup of tea. Now, 33 Bedford Row Chambers has opened its doors in Sheffield and is welcoming work from within the region and beyond. Do please follow them and Mr. Gul Nawaz Hussain, King's Counsel, on all social media platforms, and do make sure to reach out to the clerks if you require any legal representation. Do also follow Law Simplified and all the platforms inclusive of TikTok, and do head on to our website at www.law-simplified.co.uk to make sure that you are always in contact with the law. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm your podcast host, Farine Ali, and I can't wait to see you on the next one. Thank you so much for tuning in.